I usually have some extensions, but they're like way too long. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just still figuring all this out. Me and the chief of campus police here, he's been building an undercarriage for my table to hide all the cords.
Right.
So I'm getting all the networking worked out. So, yeah. Well, hey, so you've come on the podcast once before. We had an interview right when COVID started.
Yeah, it was right when the world shut down.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out what in the world do we do.
Strange times. We podcast. So you started a podcast around that same time, right? Or did you start it previously?
Well, I had my idea for what I wanted to do because I was working at Arkansas PBS.
Which is all, I use the resources all the time. Teaching Arkansas history, dude, all the time. I use those resources.
They do great work, and I'm still friends with everybody there. Still love them. They're some of my best friends, really. We text all the time about when are we going to go have tacos again. That's the most important thing. But I was doing a podcast there called Country Fried when the American Idol thing came up. Actually, the last episode that I did was the Bobby Bones interview that I did the day of my American Idol audition. That was back in February. And I knew I wanted to keep doing podcasting even after I left Arkansas PBS. But the way that the timing worked out, it started immediately because once I was gone from there, it was the American Idol thing started. So you start getting phone calls and emails. You're like, okay, I'm booking these shows. I'm going to do these things. And then decide, okay, I'm going to move to Nashville. I start looking at apartments and start looking for different opportunities. And then the whole world caves in, So now you're like, okay, where do we go from here? How do I pick up these pieces? So going through the whole, I'll stop eventually. This story will not go on as long as I think some of them did last time. But
no, hey, dude, so I got to my last podcast. The guests talked a fair amount, but they weren't talking a lot, so I talked a lot. Yeah. And it's actually great when the guest talks a lot. I'm like, yeah, please. But then somebody was like, this dude talks way too much talking about me, and I was like, yeah, but yeah,
well, it's your show.
It is. That was kind of a bunch of people were like fans, like Hope Adair from the radio station. She was defending me and stuff. Bless her heart. But it is like it just is organic. It's like sometimes the guests talk a lot. I did a podcast a few weeks ago with 3 other people, all digitally, and there's a couple of weird moments. It's like I don't have conversations with 3 people simultaneously very often. And They were all smarter than me, too. They were historians from U of A.
That helps. You can let them go on a little longer when you get... I remember once years ago, because I've always dabbled in podcasting, and back when internet radio was a thing. Yeah. Now they call it podcasting. That's basically the only difference is we have to cut the music out because we got busted on the music rights, and we're not always live anymore. Sometimes we are, but most of the time it's just recorded now. But it's still a lot of the old internet radio pirates are doing the podcasting now. But I didn't know it was illegal back when I was doing it. I was like 13. That's why I didn't know that starting an internet stream and playing all of this music from my collection was illegal because I wasn't paying royalty. I had no idea what that meant. I just thought I was playing these cool records and doing this show and getting guests. And it was amazing because it was before Facebook became as big as it is now and as guarded as it is now. There were no blue check marks. So there was no, safety net of, public figure spaces or anything like that to where, you had these verified pages and everything. I would just find artists that I liked on Facebook and verify based on their mutual friends if it was really them or if it was a fake profile. And I would just reach out to them through there and ask if they wanted to do an interview. Totally not the way you're supposed to do it.
And how shit, that's how I do it now.
Well, and a lot of times it works, but usually you're supposed to go through their publicist or their manager.
I've had to do that.
I undercut the whole thing, but I only got told no once, and it was Jizzy Pearl from Love Hate, and he just left L.A. Guns, and that was kind of a bummer because I really liked his voice and everything, but he I don't know if he wasn't in a great mood or whatever, but I got told flat out no by him. But and where I was going with that is talking about guests who just talk a lot. I interviewed Jim Dandy from Black Oak, Arkansas.
Yeah. We were talking about Black Oak, Arkansas. I had this author, Van Halen Rising, on the other
I'm
day.
going to watch
Greg
that. I've got it
Minoff.
bookmarked on my YouTube to
It's
watch.
good. He's on Audible too. If you listen to audiobooks, he's got 2 of his books on Audible: the Van Halen book and the one about the producer, Tedwell, I think is the name. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
But
to
he
listening
brought
to
up
that
Black Oak, Arkansas, and because he said that Van Halen's like, look, we gotta dress like Black Oak, Arkansas.
Oh yeah, David Lee Roth saw Jim Dandy in a club. I think it was at the Whiskey. Black Oak, Arkansas was playing at the Whiskey, and Roth walked up to Jim Dandy and was, like, hey, I'll do my best, David Lee Roth. Hey, man! I'm not gonna do it. He just asked, can I take some pictures of you? Kind of get an idea of what you do, and Jim was fine with that. And the downside was Roth got categorized as a Jim Dandy knockoff for a while. But if you watch those two perform, they're really different. David Lee Roth, he a lot of times he'd go with no shirt, white pants, blonde hair. That's about the only parallel with Jim Dandy he had. Other than that, David Lee Roth did his own thing completely. But I asked Jim Dandy about that on my show back when I had him on there, and you'd ask him one question, he'd talk for half an hour before the next one came. I suppose that rubbed off on me a little, but.
This whole exchange is it's a unique deal. Like it goes like a normal conversation, but we both, I think everybody involved usually, it's like, well, we're recording, so how do we perceive that? You know, and it's some people, like I've had some people that go Ricky Bobby on me, and they just like, what I do with my hands right now. Like,
car ran real good. Just real pleased with how everything went.
I've had one guest big time like that, and I've had some guests say no too. I'll say the only real guest I've had say no is now coming on the podcast. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's when you know that you've achieved that victory. Where you're like, okay, now they're not saying no.
They commented on some podcast I put up, and I was like, hey, I really want to have you on here, and they're like, all right, I'll do it.
Well, see, and that's. In that case, that's probably what it took of them seeing the kind of show that you do and going, okay, I could do this. In the case of where I got told no, I think he was just kind of being
how old were you when you started podcasting? Like, how old were you?
I was, probably 12 or 13 when I first started. But it was, it was live internet radio is what it was. Broadcasting to all of nobody at the time. I just thought, you hit broadcast and somebody might be listening somewhere. Had no idea, and thankfully nobody was listening because I had no clue what I was doing. There was this old program, I miss it terribly, I still wish that they were in business. It was called You Broadcast, and it was all audio stuff, and you could upload songs into a music library. And the only thing was, if you didn't upload just one at a time, when you would go to a music break, it would put it on shuffle, so you never knew what song it was going to play. And the downside was the listeners had to download the audio player. It wasn't just like streaming on a website or something. But, I had 4 or 5 friends that would download it and listen, and so that was cool. I'm trying to remember if any of the interviews I got were while I was on You Broadcast or not. I don't remember. I almost don't think they were. I think that was when I moved to Ustream. When that kind of started, which Ustream is not the same as it was, but used to it was, now you got the video aspect of it, so I'd put up photos and YouTube videos and stuff like that while I was on. But, man, that was just really a good training ground for me to try to get an idea of what this is, and ended up majoring in journalism out at Tech, just
That's where you met Billy Reeder.
That's where I met Billy Reeder.
He's still looking for his CD. Okay, I saw it in the comments section the other day.
Yeah, and I didn't mean for it to be this long that he's been waiting on that, but it worked out that way. Comedically,
he's coming on. Let's see when, like next weekend or something. I've got him coming back, and we're training sword fighting before the podcast.
He's going to be sword 3rd. Fighting now?
Yeah, he's trained some kendo, and I train kendo with a guy one day a week. This orthopedic surgeon from Clarksville, guy's Philippines, Chinese guy from the Philippines, and he comes in and trains me in sword once a week. And Billy's like, I want to learn sword. So we sword fight.
He is going to be a pirate.
I mean, yeah, by the time it's all said and done, I got some pirate-esque swords over there that he can, so the Kung Fu swords are kind of like pirate blades. But, yeah, he's a hoot. I really enjoy talking to him. He's
a good guy.
Yeah.
And always what you see is what you get. One of my favorite things about him, somebody asked once, it was my freshman year, and somebody in our class asked him, Mr. Reeder, why is it you wear the same color shirt every day? You just wear like a plain black T-shirt or a plain red T-shirt. That's all you ever wear. And he said, you know why I wear that? Because I don't want to be pegged into, I'm supporting this brand or this brand. I think people focus way too much on that. A T-shirt is a T-shirt, and these work just fine. And without having some company name on it, it's like a third of the price. So I'm fine with it. I'm okay with not having the
built his own cabin, too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But when he says that, everybody's kind of like, he's right. Instead of paying $30 for the same T-shirt that says Abercrombie and Fitch, just pay $5 for it with no brand on it, and you'd be amazed it's the same T-shirt and it's fine.
Yeah. Visionary thinking right there.
Yes, it is.
So at what point I saw that you were posting about you had interviewed Charlie Daniels, right? I saw you post that when he passed away just recently, but
yeah.
when was it? When were you doing those kind of interviews? How long had been in podcasting when that was going on?
That was last year when I did that. That was for the Country Fried podcast with Arkansas PBS. It was AE10 then, but they changed it to Arkansas PBS this year.
Just changed that, yeah.
And that was something that everybody always, like, just as localized as everything is on PBS stations, everybody thought a lot of those PBS shows were done in Conway. And there's kind of a beauty to that people think it's all local. So that's kind of what you go for. But, they just finally decided, people always call us Arkansas PBS. We're just going to change the name to that. So it made perfect sense. But yeah, the Charlie Daniels thing, it was kind of strange how that one came up. But I was working with a publicist in Nashville. It was, oh man, now I'm blanking on the name. Absolute Publicity. Now I'm trying to think of his name because I want to give him credit because he was a really nice guy.
You can message him. We can patch it in the description.
Yeah, I got Google.
Yeah, go pull it up, man. Dude, I will.
I do want to give him credit on this because he was way nicer to me than he needed to be.
Go for it. I was. I'll tell you an embarrassing one. I was sitting on this podcast with this activist. He was on, and it wasn't the guy from Clarksville that organized the Black Lives Matter rally, but it was another guy that's doing similar stuff all over the state. And I was like, I had blanked on what the first date African American slaves were imported. I'm a historian. I teach college classes, so I was like, and two, there's also that New York Times award-winning the 1619 Project, and I was like, oh, dude, I'm blanking, man. Like, and he's like, he didn't know it either, so it made me feel better. But I was like, I just lectured over it again like 2 weeks ago, but it's 1619. Okay, I've redeemed myself here on the podcast.
There we go.
Yeah.
I didn't know it either, so
yeah.
You got one up there, so you're good.
Yeah.
But man, I hate when that happens, and I'm comfortable enough with it now that like on the new podcast that I'm doing, the first episode, I cut out a few of those spots where I kind of blanked. Mm-hmm. I say a few. There was only really a couple because they're a little bit shorter than what I used to do. I figured I would, instead of rambling as long as I normally can, which again I apologize because I'm kind of doing it now, but I just decided I'd do smaller segments and just kind of focus on one topic at a time because it seems like I do a little bit better getting it out that way. I do too, man. Like
an hour is about. I notice I get the best views, and I always try and dial it in, especially if I'm doing a Zoom podcast. I'll just say, I'm like, let's do an hour. And then they know ahead of time. But, man, I've done, like, Billy and I want to say our only podcast for 3 hours. Like,
well, and when you get the right guest in there that can go for that long and doesn't care how long it's going, they're just on and you're on, man, there's nothing better than that. Mm-hmm. So I've got Don Murray Grubbs.
All right, Don. I
knew it was 3 names. I just could not remember. And Caroline, too, with the Absolute Publicity. They were great to me with that Country Fried podcast because – when I started it, I didn't really have a reputation to go off of for that podcast, because I had done internet radio and stuff when I was in high school, but that's not something that you want to tell a national publicist, because it doesn't really mean anything. I had an internet radio show that 8 people listened to. Okay, that doesn't help my case at all for getting Charlie Daniels.
Yeah.
But the first one I actually interviewed Marty Rabin of Shenandoah, and that was the same publicist. And that was actually Caroline with Absolute Publicity hooked me up with that one. I went to Gillies at Choctaw Casino in Pensacola and interviewed Marty and watched the show. Man, I got to tell you, that's still one of the coolest evenings I've ever experienced.
So you did mobile. You went to them.
Yeah, I did. Had a little Tascam 4-track. Or no, it was an 8-track, but you could record 2 at a time. The DP008. Yeah, that I ended up. We got one of those for the station a little bit after that, because I said I got to mobilize. We need one of these smaller.
That's why I got that, is to do what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think the one that I ended up ordering for the station was the Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom's very popular.
It had the most inputs. It had 4 inputs, because I was going to do some stuff where I had multiple people on at the same time, which it didn't end up doing any of that before it stopped. But yeah, the Charlie Daniels interview. It's not that. I mean, I don't really get starstruck anymore. To the point where I'm just like fangirling. I mean, maybe in my head I kind of am, but as far as not really knowing what to say or going, oh my God, I love you so much, I don't really do that anymore. I got over that in high school pretty much. Not to say it would never happen. If I met Travis Tritt or Gene Simmons, it might still happen. But other than that, it's probably pretty much done. I don't know why I just admitted that. That's not going to help my case at all. But with the Charlie Daniels thing, I had seen him 3 times, and he's one of my favorite musicians, extremely underrated. And there was something that I wanted to talk about with him in the interview. People look at him as the fiddle guy.
Yeah.
And, of course, his biggest songs are fiddle songs. Devil Went Down to Georgia, South's Gonna Do It Again, Drinking My Baby Goodbye. Those are all fiddle songs. So that's how people know him. But if you went to see him, 90% of the show he was playing guitar. And he was an extremely great guitar player. Never got the credit he deserved. Even after he'd had a stroke and had a lot of trouble with arthritis, and his hands just weren't doing what he needed them to do anymore. But man, he could still pick that thing so good. It was just amazing to see how well he worked, and his band was so incredible. Always picked great musicians, and he was just so well spoken too, not only on stage but off stage. So I knew that was going to be one of those situations where even if I was kind of off during the interview for some reason, if I didn't have my A game, I knew that he could save it. But thankfully it went really well, and man, it was just a blast being able to talk to somebody that I'd looked up to for so long, and just to be able to talk just about music, because I got to do the same interview with him that I would like to do with Ted Nugent someday. Talk about the music. Everybody else wants to talk about, well, what do you think about this politician or that politician? No.
Let's talk about conservation.
He's done 5 interviews today where people asked him the exact same questions. Yeah. Ask him about how he came up with the riff for Stranglehold. You'd be amazed that nobody's asked him that yet. Instead, that's the kind of interview I want to do. I want to ask about your music. I want to ask about, your songs, what got into your head when you wrote this, how you struggled through your time in the music business, how you kind of evolved into this changing industry where now it's in a weird position where the only record sales to speak of, aside from just the top tier modern artists, are pretty much the classic artists who still have their audience buying physical albums and going on iTunes and stuff like that. But then at the same time, you're not getting radio play. So how do you make that change? That's the kind of interviews that I love to do. It's just talking about that. I didn't want to talk about politics and this or that, or if you could be a tree, what kind of tree would you be? And all. I have no patience for that. So. I feel like I've gone on another tangent.
No, hey. Well, let me flip that on you. So I dig this. So are you still doing Country Fried Podcast, or you?
Well,
is it a
sort
different
of.
name now?
It's a different name, but it's this pretty much the same show, because I did that show totally by myself, started it by myself, and produced it, hosted it, the whole thing by myself. So it was still kind of my show the way that I would do it, even though it was, done under the Arkansas PBS banner. So, the Country Fried, that's kind of its own thing. It's done now. So I didn't really want to start a new podcast that seemed like it was going to be the same thing, because even though I'll still do interviews and I'll still have episodes that are purely about country music, but there are other things I want to talk about too. A lot like what you're doing. You have a lot of different interests, a lot of different people you want to talk to about different things. It's not the same thing every episode. You want to talk to musicians, historians, newsmakers, people in the community who have interesting stories, just anything. And so I didn't want to really put too many boundaries around it, but I still knew at the end of the day, country music was going to be a big part of it, just because that's what I do and that's who I am. So I just decided, I've got a new song called Country Fried that's on my new album, same name, Country Fried.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm really, that's going to be my Margaritaville. We're going to have Jimmy Buffett's got the Margaritaville blender and lawn furniture, and I'm going to have the Country Fried rotisserie and chicken breading.
It's a great name, man. Like I dig the name. I'm like,
I appreciate that,
Country
man.
Fried. That's
I was just the way that I came up with that name. It was when I was at Arkansas PBS, and I was just kind of brainstorming with my boss Julie Thomas one night, because we were thinking about, okay, now what are we going to call this podcast? It can't be something that's just like a boring, obvious name, because I didn't know exactly what direction. Because they'd never done a podcast before, so I didn't know what direction they were comfortable starting with, as far as what tone do we want to go for, and how much fun can we have with this before people would accuse us of being silly, basically. And it turns out that everybody was fine with it, which was good news for me. But we were just having a brainstorming session, and I said, there's this really oddball movie that I love called the Kentucky Fried Movie. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
Or not. I mean, it's absurd. It's offensive. It's that corny kind of 70s vibe, but it's there's a beauty to that. It's just it's one of those things where everybody's in on the joke kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely, it's not safe for kids at all. But yeah, anyway, I don't know what got me. Oh, yeah, the name. So I was talking about, there's Kentucky Fried Movie. If only there was something cool, like if we were in Kentucky, you could call it Kentucky Fried Podcast or something like that. I said, but we're in Arkansas, so Arkansas Fried doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And I said, I guess if you call it Country Fried, and then I went, I like that.
Down home.
Yeah, I liked it, and you can tell just by looking at me that my diet has a lot of country fried in it. But the new podcast, the chorus to that song Country Fried that I wrote, it ends with American Born and Country Fried. And so I just decided, well, seems like that's kind of staring me in the face, so that's what the name of the podcast is now, Ryan Harmon, American Born and Country Fried.
Oh, yeah.
So it's still got that country element in there, but there aren't really any boundaries on what the content could be, and there are a lot of episodes. Like last week I just talked about music that I've been listening to, new music that's out that I wanted to talk about and get the word out. There will be times where I'll just probably be sitting in my car after a show, eating my Rally's chicken wings at 2 in the morning, when I come through Conway after a show or something. And I do love those chicken wings. They are good. They have to cook them fresh when you order them. That's part of the beauty of it. So they're always good and hot. But there will probably be times where I just sit there and just record a podcast, just talking about what happened that day, or what's going on. Just whatever feels right to me.
Yeah, I think that's important. I want to do more concert reviews on this. Thank you for coming to play music for us today. There are a few concerts to go to, even though it seems that is loosening a little bit right now. I know you've been playing some shows and here and there.
Yeah, I think that, and this is something that I'm really proud of, and I'm not surprised. Everybody in the music business is willing to do what we have to do to get back to work right now. If we're not allowed to have 100% capacity, okay, how much can we have? We'll do it. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work. And, the downside is a lot of the big tours they're going to get hit the hardest, oddly enough, because they have the biggest overhead. And so, you're looking at, okay, you have a full band tour with a huge production, 10, 18-wheelers full of gear and staging equipment. Well, if you can only play to 8,000 people, whereas normally it would be probably 15, 16,000, it's either, and I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I think that some of the costs are going to have to go down. They're going to have a little less personnel and cut back a little bit on their production, but at the same time, I think they're going to have to elevate the ticket prices a little bit. Although Doc McGee, from the manager from KISS, who's a guy I really want to interview too, he was talking on a podcast I was listening to a few weeks ago. He said that he thinks that the ticket prices are actually going to come down to a more suitable level that they should have been at all along. He said consumers are not going to be able to pay these outrageous prices right now, and they're certainly not going to be able to pay elevated prices. He said I was fighting against $100 tickets when it first started. I wanted tickets to stay at $25, and he said it's just absurd. Yeah. And I was surprised to hear him say that, but he's one of the few guys that could get away with saying that because he's been in the business for so long, and when you manage one of the top touring acts in the business, people aren't really going to mess with you. So Ticketmaster is not going to really fight him on that because they want that KISS tour. But that's just that's something that, fortunately, on the smaller level, playing clubs and restaurants and small theaters and stuff like that, people who are on this level, it's not as much overhead, so we're still going to be able to kind of do what we'd been doing before. Of course, the restaurants and the bars can't have the same capacity right now, but we're managing. We're doing good, and you would be amazed at, even when it's 50% or 60% capacity, whatever the numbers are currently, I can't even keep up, but you would be amazed that it's still a really great crowd. Yeah. And the people who come to the show really want to be there. They're not taking it for granted, because we went 2 or 3 months without having any live music, and I think everybody missed it enough to where now they're like, okay, I'm gonna be in the moment. I'm glad to be here. So everybody that comes in is just ready to party. So it's actually been really great. I will tell you that, oddly enough, even with all of that, last weekend I played an event in Little Rock, the Yaddaloo Music and Arts Festival, which normally would be a live in-person festival. That started last year. My friends Cliff and Susan Prowse, terrific musicians and absolutely great people who do so much for the music community and for charities and things like that. They're just wonderful people. And Anna Brazil, who I just met at the Yaddaloo Festival last weekend for the first time, but I knew who she was. They put this festival together with, even though they have national acts, everything has an Arkansas focus. So the national acts even have Arkansas ties. That's what was really cool about it. But the whole thing was digital this year. And they had some people who pre-recorded sets, and then had other people who came in and did live performances. And I went and did mine live last Saturday. And nice. It was so cool because there was still a little bit of a crowd because it was all musicians hanging out, It's people who you hadn't seen in months. And, a couple of people who I hadn't really seen at all, aside from just, we played the same places. I ran into Buddy Case, who's a musician who played around here a lot. He doesn't live around here right now, but I remember we had played a show at the train depot when they were just using the docking station as the stage before they put in that really, really cool stage there now. But we did a show there once several years ago, and so I had seen him and kind of crossed paths with him, but never really got the chance to hang out and talk with him. But then there he was at Yaddaloo last weekend, so it was just cool to be able to get back to that, So, right now it's still getting there from a financial standpoint. There's still some room to improve, but from, I think, a cultural standpoint, from a social standpoint, I think it's good for everybody right now. Everybody appreciates it, and everybody's in for the long haul. So, but it's also a thing of, we just have to figure out how to adapt. They all say adapt and overcome. Well, we're figuring out. We can't just sit at home and not do these shows, and we can't have these musicians who are not knowing when the next. So we just figure out what it is. If we can't go back to, and my theory is, I'll shut up in a second, I swear. My theory is, a lot of the shows that would normally be playing to 15, 18,000 people in arenas might go to stadiums now. Because with some stadiums, with the capacity limitations, that would be about what they could have. And maybe they could squeeze in a few more. You know, if you played Nissan Stadium in Nashville, I think their capacity is like 75,000, something like that.
I've been there. I think I saw Roger Waters there, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, my gosh.
Dude, we had tickets to see Roger Waters in November again for the third time, and they got refunded.
Man, I wanted. So I'm kicking myself because I'm not really a Pink Floyd fan at all, aside from a little bit of stuff. But when he did the tour for The Wall, I had heard so many great reviews about it and didn't go when it came through Tulsa. And the reason I didn't go is because the tickets were so high. Mm-hmm. But after it was over and I saw videos from it, I went...
Yeah, Roger hates capitalism, by the way.
Yeah.
But his T-shirts are super expensive.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, you know, but I could see why it costs so much. If you look at the production...
Tools, man, the amount of stuff that these bands unload, like Tool, Roger Waters. I think Roger Waters had 18 semi-trucks.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. You know, and that was a show that he could do in arenas and stadiums, both. Usually, like even AC/DC, they have two separate stages. Mm-hmm. You know, on their Black Ice tour.
I went to that, yeah.
Yeah, did you see him in Little Rock?
Yes.
Great show.
Yes.
Couldn't hear a freaking thing, but
I was way up in the nosebleeds too. Yeah.
Man, that was that and Nugent are the two loudest concerts I've ever been to.
Never seen Nugent. I would though. I would go listen to it.
It's a great show, you know, and that's part of what I'm talking about. Of you know, that's where I mean he's still you know he'll do political rants on stage, which you know it's entertaining to see his energy with it, you know, regardless of what you think. But he'll still play all the songs that you want to hear, and he'll dig in and do deep tracks and everything. And he's a great live performer. Mm-hmm. But you know, with the AC/DC show, man, that was so. My only complaint with that was it was almost too loud. You know, I was in the lower bowl, and I could hear Angus loud and clear as if his amp was in my head. Could not hear Brian Johnson.
Was it Angus or Malcolm that passed away?
It was Malcolm.
Okay, yeah.
And they've actually got because they're going
with
to
Axl Rose there for a while. They replaced the singer.
Yeah, and that Axl did a great job.
He did.
You know,
he was even in a wheelchair for part of it.
Oh yeah, you know, and that's just there was nothing more rock and roll than Axl Rose borrowing Dave Grohl's chair. You know, because Dave Grohl for a while had a broken leg and had to do shows in a chair, so he loaned Axl Rose his chair to do fill-in shows with AC/DC. It's like that's like the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game. You know, it's like we've already touched 3 points here, but you know, it's been a very poorly kept secret that AC/DC is going to do a reunion with Brian. It was going to happen this year. Obviously, that got canned.
Yeah. I did hear something about that, actually, yeah.
And, of course, unfortunately, Malcolm's not here anymore. So it's not going to be the same because Malcolm was the chief songwriter and really creatively he was the guy who led the band in different creative directions and was, in a lot of ways, he was probably the Roger Waters of AC/DC. But they've got their nephew, Steve, I think is his name, Steve Young, filling in for Malcolm. Playing the same guitars to the same amps, you know, and of course it's his last name's Young, so that checks that box too. So it's still there, and they got Phil Rudd back in the band, which you know that was.
Did Chris? Is he the bass player?
No, Phil Rudd's the drummer.
Okay. Was the bass player went to prison for murder or something
that was the drummer, Phil Rudd.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but
he's back.
Yeah, he had tried to hire a hitman for his ex-wife.
Allegedly.
Yeah, well, I think he got convicted.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken. But you know, he hit a bump in the road.
Yeah, but he's back.
he's back now. You know, and from the reports I've read, he's doing fine, which is great. Cliff Williams had retired after the Axl Rose shows, and it was thought that he did not like the fact that there was a chance Axl would continue full-time with the band just because he thought it should be Brian or we should retire. You know, those were the rumors. He never really said that, you know, as far as actually coming out and just saying that directly. But Phil Rudd's back in the band. Cliff Williams is back in the band. So it'll be great. They have a new record done. There were photos that leaked on Facebook last week that they filmed a music video for one of the songs. So it's happening. When it's going to happen, I don't know. You know, they're one of those bands that they can go play stadiums and probably will. And if they they kick it up next year, it'll probably be stadiums for 30, 40,000 people, I would imagine, because that would be about all they could do with the capacity limitations. I think the big teller, which I cannot wait for Razorback football to get started back up. It's, tomorrow is just, it's like, finally, we got it. But I think that'll be the big teller, is how college sports do in the stadiums,
for sure.
to be able to figure out how music will apply to that in the future. But I think it's going to go really well, because everybody wants to get back to work. They understand what we're up against, and they understand what we got to do to keep it moving forward. So I think ultimately it'll be fine. And just like anything else, I'm sure the first time the flu came around, people did not have a clue what to do because they'd never seen it before. But now we have a vaccine. We have a much better handle on what it is and how to treat it, and we figured it out. So that will eventually happen too. Don't know when. There's always talk about when will there be a vaccine, and how quickly can it be available, how much will it cost, and all that. The fact that we're at least to the stage where they're talking about getting close to that, I think is a good sign. Yeah. That's probably fairly quickly compared to how it would have gone maybe 100 years ago, trying to figure out something. So,
the hypodermic needle just came about in the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
So, but let me ask you this. So we're in this age where we're talking about digital concerts and all this. This is one thing. I saw you post about this on Facebook this week or something. But music listening experiences, those might be outlawed pretty soon in the digital world, right? So I'm going to live stream you playing some of your music today, and as I understand it, as long as you don't have a problem with it, that's not an issue. Or I'm uploading after the fact. I'll live stream one of the songs on the Facebook page, as long as you're okay with that.
Oh yeah.
But I saw you post. You're like, hey, this may be the last one, because you play cover songs and stuff, right? I had Bike Sabbatical. They played some cover songs. Some of them got flagged. Some of them did not. And
that's always, you don't know until it happens, and that's always the thing about it. With YouTube, they kind of figured it out. They've
got it.
Yeah, if you play a cover song, where the rights holders are cool with it being on there, then you won't be able to monetize that video, but it will be monetized, and the ad revenue will go to the songwriters.
Goes to them, yeah.
And totally fair. So the way it should be, makes it easy on everybody, I think, because
you probably will get some more views and subscribers.
Oh yeah. And you as the content uploader don't have to fool with any of the royalties or anything like that. It's taken care of by YouTube. So I think it makes it easier on everybody. But with Facebook, they've dipped their toes in the water, but they haven't really jumped into that pool yet. They've talked about it, and they do have some licensing agreements with some labels and some performance rights organizations, but they don't have quite the same system as YouTube does yet, and I don't know if they want that. And I think that's why they're putting out this new thing for the live streaming guidelines. I did read an article late last night that was really interesting, and it pointed out, because it was from CD Baby, which is the I used to know words at one point. At one point in my life, it's the distributor I use for my music. They sent out an article saying, we're cutting through all of the BS. Here's what you really need to know. And so that was a great article to read. And based on that, it made me feel a little bit better, just knowing that if I did want to do another Facebook stream, it would be okay. Probably.
You get some of the streams I've seen you do are like people from all over the world, and you're getting a lot of great views.
And that's why I love doing it, because like I said, there's people that can watch it from anywhere, and that's something that I hadn't thought about before. When I'm playing in Conway, that's great, and I love it, and I love seeing all my friends and everything. But somebody who is in Australia who really likes country music,
I remember seeing somebody. I almost said Australia a second. I remember seeing somebody from Australia watching your thing and commenting.
I know Australia has a big country music following, but man, just the amount of people that come in say I'm from Australia, and I love that. I'm going to have to figure out a way to go there and play a show one day just to see what happens. But yeah, it's cool, because people who really couldn't or wouldn't, buy a plane ticket to come see me in Fort Smith or whatever, you know, because it would just cost way too much to come for one show. But they can be a part of this thing online, and they can watch from the comfort of their home, and especially because in a lot of places the restrictions may be different. So even if they wanted to come see me, maybe they couldn't. So it is really cool with that. But as far as with this article I read last night, and I'm going to give it a little bit, and I'm not going to be the guinea pig for once. I'm just going to kind of see what happens, because I trust this source, but I have my doubts about how well it will work or how long it might last. So according to this, these are not necessarily new guidelines. They're the same ones that had already been in place, as far as you're not supposed to play copyrighted material.
We get flagged playing it in the gym. We'll do a Facebook Live, a class, and the music's playing in the background and picks up on that. And that's happened. I saw an old flag in my inbox today from like 2016. It's been happening.
Oh, yeah. And so that's something that's always been in place. And the listening experience thing apparently has been in place too. But I guess that it's been ramping up to be a bigger problem in recent history, because people will just, according to the article I read, people will just have a static image, nothing else, just one picture, and they'll stream their music, you know, whether it's music they wrote or a playlist they put together, and just stream that on their Facebook Live. And Facebook does not want that anymore. And it's their platform, so that's understandable. If that's the way they want to do it, they have the right to do that. It certainly will probably help them with the headaches of the royalty payments and everything, kind of cracking down on some of that. But the one thing is, they did say, as long as there's a visual element, like this is totally fine, because people can see us, and there's a visual element to it. You know, it's not just a picture with audio.
I've seen what you're talking about in more than just music, I feel like, too.
Right.
Like, I've seen people rip off UFCs in real weird ways. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and that's a big deal. And I was surprised to find that. I guess any sporting event would be that way, but yet I was kind of surprised to find that a lot of the fights, it's kind of strange how they will try to bootleg those.
Any fight you want to watch
market for
before noon on Sunday, it's on YouTube, man. So yeah.
Yeah, but I based on this article that I read, I feel a little bit better about the possibility that I could do it again if I wanted. But with this, and the fact that they're, I guess, just kind of cracking down a little more on these restrictions they already had, it sounds like what they're doing is anybody who is doing a live stream where they don't really interact with their audience, you know, they don't take questions or you know,
you get shout-outs between every song, man, and talk to people.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I saw your post, and I was like, damn, that sucks for you, because I've seen you interact, right? I've seen what you do. But it is some light in the tunnel of what you're saying is that they observe, like, it's the individual interacting with their audience, because there's going to have to be tons of exceptions here.
Right. And based on what this article said, there's not going to, which this doesn't surprise me, because after trying to figure out Facebook ads, I know there's not a human being that's looking at all this stuff. It's just just a very flawed system that flags all this stuff.
Did you see that the Netflix documentary that just came out, the Social Dilemma?
I didn't. You know,
it's a worthy watch.
I'll admit my Netflix has been down for probably about 2 years, because I just kind of got.
I made a joke. Everybody canceled their Netflix 2 weeks ago. I made a joke in class today because of that they released that controversial French film with the kids twerking.
Yeah,
and shit.
I saw that.
Yeah, like everybody I know canceled their Netflix. I did too. I don't have it anymore.
Well, and mine has been down just for a couple of years, just because I kind of, you know, I got it because Norm Macdonald went to Netflix, and I love Norm.
Dude, he's like one of the original OG podcasters.
Oh, yeah. He'd been doing this for a long time. Yeah. So I got it just so I could watch Norm Macdonald's stuff on Netflix, and then ended up watching, you know, Bill Burr.
Oh, yeah. The great comedy on there.
Oh, man.
Dave Chappelle's new stuff
on
there.
They've got the market cornered on that. But once I kind of watched all that, and I watched Bill Burr and Chappelle and Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld, at that point I was like, you know, I think I'm good. There's not anything. At that time, there wasn't anything new coming out that I wanted to see, so I just kind of let it go. But a friend of mine, Deshaun, was on a show called Sing On that just started up on Netflix. He was on there. I think that just came on a week or so ago. But I need to re-up that so I can finally watch that. Because they don't really, Netflix is really good about, pulling. If people try to upload a Netflix thing to YouTube, they'll shut that down pretty quick. But yeah, I need to. I did hear about that Social Dilemma, so I need to watch that.
Pretty good documentary. I still haven't seen the one, The Great Hack. That's someone that people keep telling me to watch that one, so I'll have to check that out. It's I don't know what it's about. I think it's about the 2016 election, but I'm not sure. So, but anyway, well, so what are you gonna play today, man? You got some tunes today from the new album. Like, what are you thinking about breaking us off with? You want to tell any background on any of the songs you got planned, or?
Well, I hadn't really given that much thought. I usually figure it out once I put the guitar on.
Well, hey, I'm glad I asked. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I need to. You're right. I should have thought of it before now. But I think I do need to play my new single, Country Fried.
That's the one with the music video, right?
That's right.
I watched that just recently, and I was showing the American Idol video. I showed that to my classes last week. I sent you a picture of that.
But that was cool. I appreciate it.
They were like, this dude is amazing. I was like, I'm about to hang out with him, guys. Man, they did really, like, as soon as you started singing. It's like the first time I heard you sing, man, I was like, wow. And then I was like, man, this dude's from Lamar. That's what I was. You are from Lamar, right?
Yeah. Born and raised.
Clarksville for me. So, and out here in Russellville, but everybody I run into, I'm like, this guy's from Lamar.
Well, and that's the thing, being from Clarksville, Lamar, Clarksville, Russellville. That triangle. It's like that's where we're from, because that's the point of reference area. Somebody says, "Oh, where are you from?" I'm from Lamar. Where's that? Do you know where Clarksville is? Huh? Do you know where Russellville is? Yeah. Okay. Half an hour.
Yeah, man. Man, I guess you ready to jam a little bit?
Sure, man.
Well, let's go ahead and do it, and feel free to. We got you a mic up over here. Feel free to just talk on that thing like you're talking on here. If you have any stories or anything you want to tell before you jam, and we'll get you plugged up, man.
Sounds good, bro.
Man, it's been great talking with you, Ryan. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you got to play.
Me too, man. I'm glad I got to come here, man. This studio is freaking awesome.
I just moved in, too. Like, Paul's seen it come together a lot just since I've been in here. So, I said if you ever want to come in and record an EP or anything, all right, feel free. If you ever want to, I'm sure I'll hit you up for another podcast eventually. I'll give you several months to
anytime
between, but I really appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime, man. And I will apologize again. I think we were meaning for this to be a little bit shorter, and I just kept on.
No, this
is
perfect. I bet we. I couldn't have you on and not talk with you. So I asked the questions I wanted to ask, and found out tons of stuff along the way, which is the goal. And now we get to hear you play.
Absolutely. I will say, just closing out because I feel like I didn't really answer your last question about the Facebook thing. YouTube is where I'm going to have a lot of my content now. Focusing on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ryan Harmon Music.
Yeah, tell everybody where we can find everything you got out there.
RyanHarmonMusic.com is where I've got pretty much all of my information, all links to everything. Facebook.com/Ryan Harmon Music. On Instagram, I'm at Ryan Harmon Music. Twitter, I'm at Ryan Harmon Music, but Twitter, it doesn't do well for me.
I don't do Twitter.
Yeah, I've got one. When I put something on there, it gets 2 or 3 likes, and I'll still put stuff on there every now and then, but I know that people don't really gravitate to my Twitter, so that's a very weird sentence.
Are you still doing the COVID? Are you still doing the COVID shirts? I bought one of those when we were on the last podcast.
Thanks,
I
man.
can't believe I didn't wear it today. I was working at the university right before this, so they don't let me wear T-shirts.
Right.
Unfortunately.
But the COVID shirts, those stopped. We did that for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks that those were available.
Okay. Yeah.
But those have stopped now. I will. I'm so transparent in my indecisiveness. I will have T-shirts eventually. I'm kind of. I've got so many different things I'm trying to
I can
trying to figure out
empathize,
of
man.
wanting to do, but I've got ideas of I want to make face masks because that ain't going away. So I finally found a website that
face masks for our gym.
Yeah, I finally found a website that does not just absolutely rip you off on the because it's amazing to me. Just calling it like I see it, the fact that you have to pay $20 for a mask that doesn't have any printing on it. That's before, and then with the printing on it adds another $4 or $5. And that's what you have to pay for each mask. And so if you get 100 masks, that's...
We did something like that, but it was like, it was still more expensive than I wanted it to be. It was like $8 a mask with the printing on it.
See, exactly.
I had to get like 50 minimum though or something.
Yeah, and that may be the same company that I'd found. But, it's to me, that's more realistic. But I think a lot of people have kind of, unfortunately, taken advantage of the fact that people need masks. So there's a lot of... the term price gouging has had a very certain definition this year, so I can't say for sure it's price gouging.
There's a lot of folks benefiting in numerous ways from this little pandemic we found ourselves in. At least I keep hearing about it. But man, I think we can just set an example and be good people, and you can play music and make people feel happy or whatever, give them something to connect with. I mean, that's been something that when we were COVID bound, there's no live shows happening. You were live streaming, gave the podcast a shout out one night. Appreciate that.
Oh, but you got it, man.
That's man.
That was a fun interview too.
Yeah,
I'm glad. Even though my internet connection was not great,
I thought it was fine, man.
When I was watching back at it, I noticed that every once in a while I'd be like, and then I'm like, yeah.
It happens, man. It happens.
That didn't help.
I was doing one from my office at work last week, and my MacBook was being weird about connecting to the Wi-Fi, and then I shut off and was able to use the data on my phone to finish the podcast.
I have to do that a lot.
Yeah, which I think that's how we ended up podcast or something. I can't remember. Maybe we were using your computer, but because I can't remember what the issue was. But man, I've been through all of it. So it's the fun part.
We live in the rural part of the country.
Where's that $110 million worth of internet we're supposed to get? That's yeah.
Yeah,
According to Paul, lives out here, outside of town towards Dover, and his internet speed, he's suffering too. So I'm like, yeah, where's that $110 million? They're supposed to do that just for you.
Yeah, we were going to have that. I think it's gone to face shields and rubber gloves
and webcams for universities. They've got a better live stream setup than I do in here. So in my class, in all the classrooms, it's wild. All my students, or not all, but like 14 average, are live streaming. They're not even there. They're just.
Can you see them on a screen or anything?
Yeah. Well, I have them turn their camera off after I take attendance. If they have a question, they just turn their mic on. Hey, Mr. Wilson. I'm like, don't call me. That's weird. My name's Brian. But they'll be like, oh, Tub Mosey, what were you saying? I'm like,
I don't need to even bring this up because I don't want to give anybody any ideas, and it's something you've probably already had to deal with. But after you take attendance and you have them shut their webcams off.
Oh, they're there. I'm sure they're there the whole time. Yeah. Like I will. Like everybody will leave, and I'm like the last one out of the room. My physical students will leave, and then I'll look and I'll see like 3 people on that. I'm like, you guys there? You got a question? Can I help you? You 3, you names, and they don't say anything. I'm like, all right, well, I'm turning it off. I'll sit there for a couple minutes. But yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, right on, man. Let's just a little sound check and get tuned up here. So
sounds good, brother.
Signing off.